All right, so we're going to talk about writing a linear equation from a graph today. If you'll notice, we've got a graph over here on the left, and the first thing that we need to do is kind of review what is a linear equation. So our linear equation is going to be y equals mx plus b. So m, we've talked through, is our slope, and we'll talk about how to find that here in a minute, and b is going to be our y-intercept. So that's going to be where the line crosses the y-axis. So we're going to kind of talk through that as we go, and then what we'll do is we're going to replace m and b with what we find from the problem. So I'm just going to put some blanks there. So we usually do blank x plus blank. So let's start with the slope. Remember, the formula for slope is delta y over delta x, and delta just means the change. So basically, how much is the y changing and how much is the x changing? And it's just a formula. So if we go here and we go from one point, so I'm going to be at this point right here, and then we're going to make our way to this point. So the change in y, our y-axis, goes this way, delta y, it went up 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be a positive 4 for delta y. And delta x is going to be this direction horizontally, and delta x changed 1. So another way that you will see this is they're going to write rise over run. So if we look at that as well, how much did this point rise? It rose 4. And how much did it run? It ran 1. So 4 divided by 1 is just the whole number 4. So I'm going to plug that in for our slope. Again, it was increasing, so this was a positive 4 over 1. Awesome. So let's look at our y-intercept. The y-intercept is a little bit easier to find. It is always found where it crosses the y-axis. So if you look here, here's the y-axis, and if you follow it all the way down, you can see this point right here, where our line crosses this y-axis. So the y-intercept is just that point where our line crosses the y-axis. So our y-intercept in this case would be 8. So the full linear equation for this would be y equals 4x plus 8. Okay, let's look at the next one. So same thing, we're going to do y equals blank x plus blank. This is going to be our slope, or m as we called it, and this is going to be our y-intercept, or b. Again, we'll start with the slope. The very first thing we do every single time is to write that formula. So please make sure you're actually writing delta y over delta x and then plugging into that formula. If we don't, a lot of times we switch things around and we get things a little bit mixed up. So please make sure you're writing that formula and then just plugging things into it. So let's start with this point right here, this first one that we see. And from this point to this point, if you want to count to yourself, from here to here, it looks like it went down 3. That would be a decreasing slope. That would be negative. And then from here to here, it went over 2. So negative 3 over 2. Some of you guys might want to put that into a mixed number, but actually if we're looking at slope and linear equations, it's easier just to leave it as negative 3 halves. So we're going to leave that as negative 3 over 2. And then let's look at the y-intercept. So our y-intercept, again, here's our y-axis. And if you take a look at our line, this is the point where that line crosses the y-axis. So if we look at that, it's below the x-axis, so that means it's negative, and it's at 3. So this is going to be negative 3. So it would be negative 3 halves x plus negative 3. And that would be your linear equation for this graph.